A tale not just of darkness and light, but of what happens when the darkness learns to walk on its own. The Shadow by Hans Christian Andersen. There once was a learned man, a scholar and writer, who lived in the scorching south for his health. The sun was relentless, the streets sweltering, and the light so fierce it hurt his eyes. So, during the day, he stayed indoors, behind shuttered windows, where his thoughts could wander. Opposite his balcony stood a strange house, abandoned by day, but glowing at night with faint, flickering lamplight. The scholar grew curious. What secrets did the building hold? What stories played out in the golden glow? In jest, he told his own shadow, stretched long and thin against the wall, "Why don't you go over and see what's inside?" And strangely enough, the shadow nodded. It twitched. It stretched. And then, under the scholar's stunned gaze, it slipped away. At first, he laughed it off as a trick of heat and imagination. But when his shadow didn't return the next day, or the day after, he grew anxious. A man without a shadow is no man at all, people whispered. So he cast another, a pale one. It clung to his heels, but it never felt quite right. Years passed. He grew famous for his writing and wisdom. He traveled north, back to his homeland, where the air was colder and the sun less cruel. One night, alone in his study, he heard a knock. At the door stood a well-dressed man in fine clothes, handsome and dignified. "I believe," the stranger said with a smile, "you once lost something in the south?" The scholar stared. It was his shadow, but it was no longer flat or bound to the floor. It had become a man. The shadow had gone into the mysterious house that night and discovered things too strange to speak of. Truths, desires, forbidden knowledge. In that place, it had learned how to become real. It had followed people, learned their secrets, manipulated their wants. Now it was richer, more powerful than the scholar himself. In fact, the shadow offered to take the man on as his shadow. "A jest," the scholar said, "a clever joke." But the shadow's eyes were serious. Still, the shadow paid for the scholar's travel, accompanied him to balls and courts, and whispered into his ear the dark truths behind every mask. But slowly, things turned. Wherever they went, people admired the shadow and ignored the man. The world loved charm, not depth. The shadow smiled while the scholar wilted. When the scholar grew alarmed and cried out, the shadow told others he had gone mad. Finally, in a foreign kingdom, the shadow whispered one final plan. He was to marry a princess. But for the deception to hold, the scholar must be silenced, forever. And so the shadow had him arrested. The scholar tried to speak the truth, to tell them who he really was. But no one believed a man who had no shadow. And so